Today I wanted to give you a long version story of how I really got from where I was to where I am now. You know, it's so interesting looking back. People ask me about my story a lot. My elite clients that I work closely with, and they're always asking me specifics about the story. And I had one client said, "You really need to tell it because it's taught me a lot." So I thought, why not put it out right now for you? And I'm going to do my best to give you a step-by-step of exactly what happened. So back about 15 years ago, it really started 18 years ago, to give you the honest where I started in this industry. I remember I got a book. I was in the corporate world. And the first book that really piqued my interest was Think and Grow Rich. I remember I had this ad from a gentleman by the name of Vic Johnson. And so he sent me Think and Grow Rich. I'd never heard of it before. And I read it. Within the first 2 chapters, I said, I know exactly what I want to do. I want to really help people and get in this industry. Now, I didn't believe it was possible. I was earning a low 6-figure income. The most I'd ever earned was $110,000. But I remember listening to Napoleon Hill, and he said, write exactly the amount of money you want to earn. And I said $50,000 a month. And that was the number. And I accepted that idea, even though I didn't know how I was going to do it. Anyway, over that year, I devoured book after book. YouTube wasn't as prevalent then, at least it wasn't in my life. And so I would just read books and read books. And I had goals. I remember going to Starbucks all the time, writing out my goals. Anytime I had a break in my job because I was in outside sales, I would constantly write out my goals and I would do more reading, more highlighting. Anyhow, I can look back now, even though my results didn't change in that 3-year period, my belief changed in what was possible. But then, you go back 15 years ago now. I was about to get married, 3 weeks actually before my wedding. I lost my job. My company sold. The new company came in and wanted to cut my pay. And I really believe my company selling, the company I was working for, was one of those pivotal moments in your life that really can either take you back, keep you comfortable, or catapult you. For me, it catapulted me. And what happened was there was all these rumors that my company was going to sell. And the only person I reported to was the president of the company. And I went into his office the day before it was announced that it sold. And I said, there's all these rumors about the company selling. Is that accurate? I just need to know. I need to figure out what I'm going to do if that's the case, because I'm about to get married in 3 weeks. And he looked me in my eyes and he said, you would have been one of the first to know. I can assure you the company is not selling. I come into the office the next day and the company had sold. And at first I was upset because I was misinformed. But then I remember walking out to my car. I had a Jeep Commander. I love that car. And I get in that car and I turn on the key and I said, you've got to be the biggest victim. This isn't your company. They can decide to do what they want to do. And at that moment I said, you've got to make some changes. And I was talking to myself. I was literally looking in the mirror of that Jeep Commander. And I said to myself, they're not your problem, you are. And I literally believe my philosophy changed that day of my life, like in a flash. And I said, I'm going to create a life of freedom. And what happened is the new company really put on a big push to keep me. I was the top producer in the company. And I kept saying no. They said, just come see what we're doing. So I went to see it, and I remember calling my wife when I declined their offer. They were going to give me a similar package, not as good, but they were giving me opportunities to earn more. But I thought this is my time for all those 3 years of what I'd been studying to actually be a product of the product. And I remember calling my wife, my fiance at the time, and I said, Veronica, I'm not taking the job. And I remember her saying, are we going to be okay? And I said, yes. Now, I don't know why I said yes, because I don't know that I knew that, but I believed in myself, at least at some level. Anyway, I'm driving home, and I call somebody who I started really becoming close with. And he was a 7-figure earner, and I would always take him out to lunch because that was one of the things that I learned. Start learning from people who already were doing what you were doing. Well, he said, I'll help you. And so he says, come meet me at this hotel. And so I met him at a hotel in Scottsdale. Well, wouldn't you know, I had no idea at the time, but he was partners with Bob Proctor. And I had been studying Bob for the 3 years. That was before I got mentored by him. And so Bob comes in and he introduces me. He says, Bob, you've got to meet my friend. He's one of the sharpest guys you'll ever meet. And when he said that, my self-image was so low at that time that I was like, oh, really? Is that what he really thinks of me? Because really, that's where I was. Anyhow, I'll never forget, because I was coaching people on the side at that point. I was charging, I laugh at it now because of where I was. I was charging $100 an hour. And Bob says, I'm going to be in town for a couple days. Why don't you give me your card? So I gave him my card, and I was cringing giving him my card because Bob's tagline was, tell me what you want and I'll show you how to get it. Well, I had not that tagline, but something similar. And I saw Bob look at my card, and you could tell he kind of was laughing. Well, what ended up happening is Bob and I never got together those next few days. And I just got deep into really making a decision that I was going to study this. Anyway, a few weeks later, Bob's back in town. And he says he wants to meet with you. And I said, great. And we get together, and he said, well, what is it that you really want? Now, at this moment, this conversation happened exactly 3 weeks before our wedding. And Bob said to me, he said, well, what is it that you really want? And I said, I'm not really sure. I just know I want to create a life of freedom. I don't want to work for anybody else. I don't want to take another job. I can go get another 6-figure job tomorrow if I wanted it. That's not what I wanted. And he said, how serious are you to make the change? And I said, I'm very serious because I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And he said, will you do exactly what I tell you to do? And I was very honest with him. I said, I don't know. I've never done exactly what anyone's told me to do. I'll start, stop, start, stop. And I'll never forget what he told me. He said, if you want it as bad as I think you want it, you'll follow my direction. He said, the only thing you're missing is direction. I said, I'd been studying your work and other people's work for 3 years. He said, you may have been studying it to the best of your ability, but you haven't been studying it. All I have to do is look at your results. And my results at the time, I was $150,000 in debt, didn't have a job right before my wedding. They weren't tremendous, and I was overweight. Add that to the whole caveat of this all. Anyhow, he said, if you'll do exactly what I tell you to do, I guarantee it'll change. He said, there's only 2 people you're betting on. You're betting on you and me. And I don't even need you to believe me. You just need to not believe me. And I bought into that. Anyway, he said, I will mentor you. You have to pay the price of what it's going to take, both in investment and time, to really make this change. But he said, but I read people for a living, and I know you have what it takes. So I think at that moment, I bought into his belief. Now, I remember I had to scratch and claw to put the thousands and thousands of dollars in investment, but I knew my way wasn't working. So, but here's what happened. I didn't believe it was going to happen, and that's the honest to God truth. I didn't believe it wasn't going to happen either. But what I said to myself is, I'm going to do exactly what this man tells me to do. And my logic behind it was, he's not going to put his character on the line if I do exactly what he tells me and it not working. That was my logic. But how I played the game in my mind, because life is a game as I've discovered, is I made it a game and I said, I'm going to do exactly what he tells me for a year to the letter. I didn't care what he told me to do, I was going to do it. And within 3 months, I mean, I had a massive quantum leap. I went from earning nothing to earning, $10,000 a month, which was a big deal for me at that time. Within 7 months, I was earning $25,000 a month. Within 9 months, I had it up to $32,000 a month. Well, within the year, I wiped out the $150,000 in debt and earned a positive $282. Like, I was bought in. And from that moment, I said to myself, I want to show other people how to create freedom, because that was the idea. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew how I wanted to live. I wanted to live a life of freedom where I could do what I want, when I want, with whomever I want, as often as I wanted. Well, as my life started changing, Bob told me, he goes, you need to be in this industry. He goes, it's the best industry in the world, but you need to be in it with me. And so Bob and I, we always would talk, because the mutual acquaintance who connected us, we both had a separate relationship with. And he was such a conduit for what Bob and I created together for the next 15 years. And Bob said, I want you to be my vice president of sales. And at the time I said, well, what am I going to be doing? And I just got into it and I took action. He told me what I was going to do. And he says, but I want you to build a team. I'd never built a team. And he said, there's always a first. But what was so great about Bob is he gave me full autonomy until I screwed up. And I did screw up. There's times I screwed up. There's things that I would have done differently now if I was more aware, but I did the best that I could with what I had. But him and I were always in the spirit together. And well, what happened for me is I fell so in love with serving people, but I was such a great student. I think I was so fortunate because I had such an enormous mentor who became one of my closest friends, but I wasn't trying to be friends with Bob at the time. I just wanted to change my life. It happened so organically. And Bob used to tell me, he said, you were so honest with me about your weaknesses or where you were falling. And I would always have our conversations. I'd be taking copious notes every time we talk. And now I'm not being mentored by him, but we're working together and then we're setting goals together. Well, within 2 years, I went from being $150,000 in debt, maybe it was 2.25 years, being $150,000 in debt to earning my first 7-figure income. And what I could tell you looking back, I think the first 7-figure you earn, if you've never done that, it's about getting comfortable with yourself. But it's about betting on yourself. But if I could take you back for a moment, I remember how our partnership started. I got mentored first, but then I was in a parking lot going to buy my wife her birthday gift, and I said, I have an idea. So I called both Bob and I's mutual acquaintance, and I said, I think I can help you. I wanted nothing in return. And I believe that's why I got everything in return, because I wasn't coming to get, I was coming to give. And I said, I think I can help you. And he said, well, how can you help us? I said, my 2 gifts are at that time, were selling and coaching. He goes, you'll never believe this. And he 3-ways Bob on the call, and he goes, Bob, the meeting we just had in LA, Arash just asked me about it. He goes, he's the perfect person. Let's give him a shot. And from that time, I remember getting off that call and calling my wife, and I said, everything is about to change significantly for us. And I just, you know how you have those moments in life where you just know that you know that you know? Well, that's what happened. And over the next several years, Bob and I were honestly side by side in everything. When I say he was one of my closest friends, he was absolutely, he became a second father to me, but he taught me so much. I remember him telling me, I called him one day and said, I appreciate you so much. He goes, Arash, I'm going to give you some advice. And I said, sure. He said, you're going to appreciate me more when I'm gone than when I'm here. And I didn't understand it. He said, My mentor, Earl Nightingale, told me that, and I didn't understand it. You're not going to understand it until it happens. Well, now, him transitioning and going to the next phase, I remember that exactly. Now, but what happened in those 15 years, I grew so much as a man. I grew so much as a professional. And it takes me to present day. I created a company once Bob left. I wanted to go out on my own. I would have stayed with Bob for another 20 years because I love the man so much. But once he left, it was my time because I outgrew the environment I was in. And it was my time to pass forward everything he taught me. And that's what I've done ever since. In the beginning of the year, I opened up my own company, Voss Coaching Co., with my partner, Mikey Stiller. And at the time I'm recording this, it's beginning of October. We've taken it from 0 to an 8-figure income, helping people. We have dynamic programs all working with clients all over the world. We have a live event called World Class Wealth that has created massive transformations for people. And it's beyond me, but if I could tell you looking back, there's 4 things that I can really look back when I was really losing that I did. Number 1, when I was losing, I created a new philosophy for myself. I changed my way of thinking where I let go of what could have been good, what I'd always done, to create what was great. Number 2, I didn't settle anymore in my life. I really put a line in the sand and saying, I'm not going to go take that job. And I went into the unknown because that's where the magic is. 3, I developed a significant personal standard for myself. I elevated my standard. And standard is so important because once you elevate your standard, it creates your story. Your story creates your identity. Your identity creates your results. And I stopped thinking linearly. I stopped thinking about working harder. It was constantly working on big ideas. And I could do a 12-hour video if I wanted on all the lessons that I learned from my mentor and during that time of going from failing to succeeding. The 4th thing I really did is I bet on myself and I had the guts. You know, Bob used to always tell me, he goes, if you don't have guts, you're not going to win. You've got to have guts. And this is well after the point of us really creating a significant magic together with what happened with our relationship. But I can look back and say I bet on myself. And the 5th thing I did is I just kept working on my identity. I kept on really diligently wanting to build a bigger idea of myself. Anyway, you know, I could tell you, if you would have told me when I decided to get mentored or when I decided to quit that job that all this would happen, I would have never believed it. But when you choose into you, everything changes. Now, somebody watching this may be able to relate to some parts of my story. Everyone has a great story. Everybody's story is amazing. But what I encourage you to do is step out and bet on yourself. Build your standard. Build your philosophy, build your identity, invest in mentorship. It's the biggest and best cheat code you can ever have. Now, I encourage you to come get mentored by me because I love what I do and I love helping people, and I've deconstructed everything I learned to get to where I am. I remember Bob and I, we were in Scottsdale together the second to last time I ever saw him. And he said, you know what you've done, Arash? He goes, you've created your own specialized knowledge. There's things that we would do in our 5-minute talks, and I'd say, what did you just say? And I'd make it a part of me. And he goes, I don't know. He goes, there's things that he taught me that I created in my specialized knowledge. And I remember one day we were on a call with a client together, and he said, you don't need me, you need Arash. He knows this just as well as I do. And I said, why did you tell him that? He goes, it's the truth. He goes, you know it just as well. You just don't have my experience, but you're going to get my experience. And you know, that was such a big moment for me because I never thought of it like that. I remember years ago, oh gosh, I was doing pretty well at this point, but he said to me one day, he says, do you think you're the best in the world at this? And I said, no. I said, I'm building into that. He said, you know the difference in you and me? And I said, what? He says, I know I'm the best. He said, from this moment, I want you to know you're the best. And from that moment, I accepted that idea. And I just saw myself as the best. And I believe in myself so much now compared to back then that I know how good I am at helping people get results because I get people into action. But I'll never forget that lesson Bob taught me. It's so interesting. You know, you could always measure, like when I talk about mentorship, obviously it's had an enormous impact on my life. But when I look at it, you can never measure where your decisions take you. You can measure what something costs, but you can't measure what the possibility is and where it's taking you. Now, if you look at what I want to transfer to you, you all have your own amazing story. But ask yourself, are you betting on yourself? Are you stepping out and getting the right direction? Are you elevating your image and identity? Are you building a significant standard? Because these are all key components, really, to me deconstructing and looking back while I'm even doing this video, of thinking of all the lessons I learned along the way. Be willing to fail. Be willing to burn your bridges and go all in. Without commitment, nothing happens. You know, I remember when I was first learning about decision making from Bob, he said to me, Arash, this is the single most important lesson you can learn because before you do it, nothing will change. And I said, I think I'm a good decision maker. He goes, you're not. He said, you're absolutely not. He said, you're making decision of what you know. He said, think about how we got to this point. You had to make a significant decision to bet on yourself to the unknown. That's what I want you to do from now on. And that's what decision is. You've got to be all in to where you want to go. I was all in with an ideal. And what is an ideal? It's an idea you're in love with. And I can tell you, go all in with yourself, bet on yourself, because you have genius inside of you. You have the same infinite inside of you that I have inside of me, that everybody has. And that same infinite is the same infinite that created this whole universe. You have this special backing. You've got an amazing subconscious mind that creates 96 to 98% of all your results, perceptions, and behaviors. And anything you plant in it, and it becomes your dominating thinking pattern, it's going to be expressed in your results. And that's what happened for me. And I will tell you, fall in love with yourself. Fall in love with building a bigger idea of you, because that's when your life becomes magical. The biggest challenge for people is they're letting the outside control them. Most people are trying to create what they want from the state of not having it, from the state of not believing it. You have to believe. Well, how do you believe? You have to do it yourself. You build that faith. We're believing in faith or fear. They live on different floors. They're both invisible. And you're going to believe in one or the other. You might as well believe in faith, because that's going to take you much further than fear. Faith is the strongest attitude we have. And I will tell you the biggest core, I call it the power of 5, that changed my life so dramatically, was I mastered decision making. I stepped out and bet on myself, even in the unknown, and that took a great amount of faith. I mastered attitude. I mastered understanding the laws of my mind and how the laws of the universe work. I mastered my personal standard, and I keep elevating it, and I encourage you to do the same. I mastered self-image. Listen, you can never outperform your self-image. You can change it, but you can't outperform it. And I mastered discipline. Discipline is a huge one. I was the most undisciplined person you could have ever met. But once I started understanding discipline is in your thinking, not your activities. Your activities are the effect of discipline. It's going to change it. I want you to accept only what you want. Reject everything that's not what you want. Go create an amazing story. I hope you watch this and this inspires you, because I will tell you, once you bet on yourself and go all in with commitment and ask yourself, am I capable? Well, if one person can do it, anybody can do it. Go after significant quantum leaps, not linear growth. If you're working harder right now, you think, oh, if I work more hours, I'm going to doggedly do it harder, it's going to get better. It's not. It's not a matter of how many hours you work, it's how effective those hours are. I want you to focus on quality, not quantity. Think about quality. constantly. What are the 3 biggest goal achieving activities I can do today? And do it with a swagger, do it with an attitude. Borrow my belief just like I borrowed my mentor's belief. Well, I hope you got a lot out of this. I keep getting asked this, and I had a client say, you've got to put this story in long form. So this is for her, and this is for all of you. Create an amazing story. You're just getting started. It's going to get better and better. Big things are coming for you. Everything that has happened in your life has prepared you for this moment. Seize the moment. Do not stay in your comfort zone. Your comfort zone is a dumb idea. Nothing magical happens in your comfort zone. Go bet on yourself. World class is your birthright. Freedom is your birthright. Quantum leaps are your birthright. Go bet on yourself. Go all in and do it.